morning, good afternoon, good evening. That is Jack. I am Conrad, and this is the Footy 5 transfer. Not so stupid. We're going to take a look at the 5 best, in our humble opinion, Premier League transfers in and the window that closed about 2 weeks ago or so. We are in international break, so let's talk a little bit about transfers. We've got top 5 players, and this is really largely driven by what we're looking at as value, I think, except for maybe one of these, which was a big price tag, but really, really good business by a couple of different clubs here in the league.
For me, it was, how much of an impact can they make both today and over the future? You look at this transfer, these are almost transfers where you look at that and you say, that's a smart bit of business. That's not too complex. It seems like a no-brainer. Those surprisingly aren't too common in the sport. I think a lot of times some teams try to make it a bit too complex. But there are some positives. Also, I want to say, you said the window closed 2 weeks ago. I know it seems like life has been long. That was 5 days ago.
Long 2 weeks. I had a long week. But doesn't it feel like 2 weeks ago?
I won't lie. Thinking about the fact that it was last Tuesday, recording this on a Sunday, like that does feel a bit crazy.
First up, Leicester doing prototypical Leicester things. Patson Daka, 22 years old, RB Leipzig, £23 million. Just, a brilliant signing. This has Leicester's fingerprints all over it. Just a underrated, overlooked foreign player, and you get him at a steal, and he's going to play with you. Maybe they'll flip him, but he's going to be fantastic.
I think he will be a guy who's flipped because they do know how to do that. But he's the kind of guy where you said for $23 million, he can go for 3 times that in 2 windows. He's got tremendous movement. He's going to relieve the burden on Vardy, and that's probably his biggest value is that Jamie Vardy's, it's unbelievable that at 34 he's still playing at this high a level, but you can almost prolong him even longer by not running him until he's out of legs to run on. Just a brilliant sign, and personality-wise, he fits with the team very well. He's already adjusted, so I think that this was typical for Leicester. You could have done several of theirs. I think Soumare and Vestergaard are both very good transfers as well. But I think Daka is just, in my opinion, it's hard for this, even a few years from now, to look worse than an A transfer.
100%. I think this, along with Leon Bailey, who we're going to talk about here, to Aston Villa from Bayer Leverkusen for $27 million. Kind of similar. I think he's 24, 25, right? I'm messing up his age, but just a really, really good move for Villa, who had a lot of holes to fill, specifically one shaped like Jack Grealish, but a really good move for Villa to get.
Yeah, he will be. We've mentioned about replacing Jack Grealish. You want to do it in multiple areas. Buendia and Bailey will both try and contribute to that attacking and that creative force. Really good dribbler, really young, still a ton of potential, and he's been on the scene for so long. I forget exactly how old he is, but he's not.
Google that.
I'll look that up right now. He's not old at all. He's 24, so he's still got a ton of development to go. So his prime, his peak in 3-4 years, it's going to be great. And it's the same thing with Daka, where maybe it's for a higher price, but both those clubs, Villa and Leicester, have aspirations for pushing themselves further. So these 2 transfers, Daka and Bailey, both help you in the now and in where you want your club to be. So you can almost get them at a good price, develop them into being tremendous players, and either sell them or use them in your pursuits of certain competitions.
Next up, Man United and I don't know how they pulled this off at the very last minute 2 weeks ago when the window closed. On transfer deadline day, getting Ronaldo for $13 million. Yeah, he's 37. Yeah, he's got 2 years. Yeah, he's gonna be really expensive on a wage bill, but the guy just fills it up. I don't know how they're gonna play him yet with all of the talent that they've got. You put him on the left. Other than that, I don't know.
For the nostalgia factor alone, it's a top 5. I don't understand how Ronaldo can fail. He's Cristiano Ronaldo. He's 37. He's not the player he was when he left, of course, when he was a Ballon d'Or contender. I think those times are past him. I think this is best for Ronaldo. Join a team where he can be the finishing piece. He's not the finishing piece for United, and actually it frustrated me that they didn't sign a midfielder, and they almost, instead of, the one downside I will say for the Ronaldo transfer is that it was made instead of a midfielder. If they could have gotten Ruben Neves or Eduardo Camavinga or a Saul, who went to Chelsea. Get one of those guys instead of Ronaldo. That's a better transfer if you ask me, because that was their biggest issue. But Ronaldo can paper over some gaps still. And I think that he's going to be a very exciting player to watch. And he's going excitement factor alone. I mean, it's Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United. That was one of my when I was really young watching the Premier League. I barely remember that. But to see it now is a really, really cool experience. So, and I mean, the financial aspect, it's a no-brainer there as well. You're not going to sell him for more in a few years, but you're almost saying, the stock price went up like 8% after signing him.
Wall Street loved it.
Someone crazy like that.
What's interesting is they can't play. You're not going to play Pogba on the left anymore. So maybe you do get a midfielder in the sense that if they actually play him as a true midfielder.
I think
I'm worried about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in this situation.
Seeing that Wolves match and Pogba in the midfield pivot, it definitely was a bit. I realized, I didn't realize. I just observed they needed a midfielder more than they needed Ronaldo, but Ronaldo will definitely help them in some close matches, some big matches. I think he still has two more big moments left in him, and for that alone, I think it's an exciting thing to happen for the Premier League. That's for sure.
Next up, another United move: Rafael Varane from Real Madrid, who coincidentally ended up with Camavinga and not Madrid. 35 million. They were able to go and get Camavinga as a result of that deal because he was surplus to requirements at Madrid. But I think he's the perfect partner to Harry Maguire, as we've talked about. Harry Maguire does not do well running for his life, running back towards goal. He can now set back, and Varane can roam a little bit more. And he looks
tremendous. What I think was his debut against Wolves. This is a very intelligent transfer. I think that price-wise, age-wise, he's still. I mean, he's not going to grow, but he's a player who's at the peak of his powers. I'm looking up. I don't want to say he's 27, but I think that's how old he is. He's 28. So he's still got a center back, 4 or 5 more great seasons left in him. And I think that while him and Maguire, I think there still is some issues there. Other options in the market, you were still able to go get Ronaldo and Sancho on top of Varane. So for that price point, as you mentioned, it's just it was a really, really astute piece of business. And United, I have to say, hold my hands up. I've criticized them on transfers for a long time, but I debated putting Sancho, Ronaldo, and Varane up here because all 3 of those have been really, really effective pieces of business. Financially, they make a good amount of sense, and fit-wise, they make perfect sense. I think they were one player short, of course, but in terms of the individual signings, Varane is up there with some of the best signings, not just in the Premier League, but in all of European football.
And this puts, I think, a ton of pressure on Solskjaer. He's got to get something done. And this may be, all right, if you're not the guy, we're going to fire you midseason. Like, if you can't they should be,
I think at the very least,
top 3 spots.
At the very least, I think they have a good chance of winning a trophy this year, and then him walking away with maybe top 4 in a trophy. And I say walking away as in getting sacked and bring in someone who can take this squad and do the finishing touches to it. That's the one thing I would say, but realistically, you have to kind of, I think Varane and Ronaldo are no-brainers regardless of who's managing. I could be managing Manchester United, and those would still be really intelligent signings. If I walk into the locker room, I'm like, all right, boys, how we feeling ahead of the match today? Ronaldo would just look at me like "Que es este americano?" Like he would be furious.
Except he'd be speaking Portuguese.
Yeah. Well, he spoke Spanish because he was in Spain for a while. Rafael Varane would be speaking French, like baguette. I don't know French.
Baguette. Before we get to the 5th one, talk about the guys that we argued about before we got on about Danny Ings, like unbelievable signing for Villa. Martin Odegaard back to Arsenal. Hopefully will help them figure something out creatively. Daniel James to Leeds, K back to Norwich. Saul, I think, solved so many problems for Chelsea in terms of midfield depth and somebody to just spell Conte from time to time. Now that he's hurt, it's even a better signing. But
yeah, I think that one it makes sense financially. It makes sense fit-wise. I'm not sure they're going to pick up the full option on him, but that's why they brought in the loan, because it leaves you with choices and options down the road. So in that sense, those are some pretty good moves. I think there was a lot of good business by Premier League clubs, all things considered, COVID-wise and financial-wise in the window.
And then the obvious biggest transfer, Lukaku for, 98 million. He's now the most expensive player all time. I think over 400 million. I can't remember the number, 420 million. And I can't remember if that was US dollars or pounds. But
Yeah.
he solves a huge problem for Thomas Tuchel just in terms of what he does to defenses and just drags defenses wherever he goes. Then he can assist. He can score goals. He's going to make Havertz and Werner so much better.
Yeah.
We've talked about this ad infinitum, and he's just a brilliant fit for Chelsea.
Yeah, the last memory of him when recording this video was that Liverpool match, but that's not the standard at which you should hold him to, because Liverpool have a tremendous center back duo in Van Dijk and Matip. Against almost any other side in world football, he's going to thrive. And he's going to be such an impactful player for all the reasons you mentioned. His link-up play that he's revolutionized since being in Italy.
Absolutely.
After Manchester United. His finishing ability. And the fact of the matter is, the dude is just a giant human being who can back into you, and he can dribble at you too. I know that people make fun of him for his dribbling and his touch, but for a guy that size, I mean,
he's
10,
unreal.
15 years ago, he's just a target man who's just in and around the 18-yard box and wants to get the last 2 touches. But now, his touch
he can turn and move. Yeah,
his movement is unbelievable, both in terms of his off the ball and on the ball movement. So that was the kind of transfer where you say, I don't care what kind of fee it requires, I'm getting this guy at all costs, and it makes perfect sense for that. So I think that for Chelsea to be title challengers, they needed someone like Lukaku for them to go for another Champions League, another trophy or two. They needed him, and he's not like old by any means. Still has a lot of football left in the tank. So, and he's a tank. So he's phenomenal
been
transfer.
everywhere.
Exactly.
I mean, he started at Chelsea, then he was at Everton on loan, West Brom on loan, and he was at United. This guy seems like he's been around forever and has just gotten better and bigger and better and better. It's unbelievable.
He's developed so
to watch
much.
him grow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That'll do it for us for our look at the top 5 transfers for the Premier League this past window that closed 5 days ago, not 2 weeks ago. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Do subscribe. Jack, Conrad, this has been the 45. Look for us on the Twitter. Take care now. @the45.